This is why agency owners, freelancers, consultants, and marketing people will never build real wealth. I used to build everyone else's business, but now I own a piece of every business I'm involved in. I've helped agency owners, freelancers, consultants, coaches, all of those folks implement this system per my instructions. I'm Fred Gleek, and I've been doing equity partnerships for a long time. I changed my model about 15 years ago when I had someone show up at one of my boot camps, and I realized that the real money could be made by not just sending somebody off to do it themselves, but actually partnering with them to create a business. And that's what I did. That's where it all started. And it's evolved since then with multiple partners and multiple equity deals. Before I met Bill, who was the first person I partnered with, who was in the voiceover business, I was doing just regular marketing consulting. I was doing, getting paid by the hour or sometimes by the month in a retainer situation. And that was ridiculous because I was helping build other people's businesses rather than building my own. I would make them a lot of money, give them great ideas. They would implement those ideas. And what would I get? Just a retainer. That wasn't enough because they were making the big money. I was there just almost like as a hired gun, as a servant. In a situation where you're taking a retainer, you've got your income that's kind of, there's a ceiling on it, so you can't get above a certain point. And so most people who are freelancers, consultants, etc., are on this hamster wheel, constantly having to find new clients, constantly having to, identify individuals that might work with them. Whereas this system that I'm going to explain to you is all about finding partners to build real wealth. I recognize this pattern, both in myself and with other freelancers, consultants, and coaches. And when Bill showed up at my boot camp in Las Vegas, I saw an opportunity and, something where I could take and create a whole new system that was based around equity. And that's what I did with him. And that's what I want to help you do as well. There's a huge difference between an equity model and a flat fee per hour model or per month model, and even a rev share deal. For example, if you're doing, let's say you're getting paid $2,000 a month for your services, and you end up working with someone for 10 months. So you've made $20,000. But what if they've made $200,000? You've made them $200,000. You've made 20,000 yourself. And really, this is a bad deal for you because had you been participating, and let's say, for example, let's say you had a 20% participation, both either revenue share and or equity, you would have made twice the amount you would have made with this traditional deal of getting paid by the hour or by the month. So what I suggest you do is start looking for opportunities that present themselves to get into equity deals or at a minimum rev share deals. You don't have to do this with everyone, but you have to start doing it with some of your best clients and transitioning them over from hourly and monthly people, retainers, into equity or revenue share deals. Now, I say revenue share because that might be a transition step between doing hourly monthly fees and or doing equity deals. So you may have to take that kind of mini step. The biggest objection I always hear from people is, wow, this sounds really difficult and really complicated. You require probably some huge 50-page agreement that trying to get it through a legal, somebody's lawyer is going to be virtually impossible, when in fact, that's not the case at all. What I use is a simple one-page equity agreement, which, by the way, I'm happy to give you a copy of. All you have to do is in the comments here, just write the word equity, and I'll send you what I use as my one-page equity agreement that you can use and just fill in the blanks and you'll have it. The deals that I do and the percentages that you take in any kind of a deal are really dependent on a number of factors. For example, if somebody has been in business for 10 years, it would be absurd in many ways for you to ask for 50% of the business. A lot of the deals that I've done have been with people just starting out in the business, and therefore a 50-50 split made sense. But in some cases, if you're working with somebody who's been in business a long time, you may want to adjust those percentages to be more fair. For example, somebody who's working 10 years, has already established a business, and is generating revenue, you may want to take a smaller slice, say somewhere between 10 and 15 or 20%. I'd have to know the exact circumstances to give you specific instructions, but again, it would be less than 50-50. Usually all of these deals will land somewhere between a low of 10% and a high of 50%. Not everybody that you're going to come in contact with is a good deal in terms of being a great equity partner, because some people aren't great fits. Now, a lot of factors come into determining what this is. If, for example, your personalities are very similar and aren't well matched, that would be an example of somebody that you may want to avoid working with together in some kind of an equity deal. There are other things as well. Skill sets, for example. If your skill sets are dramatically different than the person you're working with, that would be a positive sign, because you don't want to have overlapping skill sets, because then who's kind of, there's no checks and balances on that relationship. So I would encourage you to understand that not everybody that you come in contact with is a good fit for this, and they should be vetted carefully and properly. And I have a lot of ideas about how to do that that I can share with you in the future. Let me give you an example of a deal that went really badly. I worked with a woman who was in the health related field for almost a year, I think. And what happened was that I didn't realize that I wasn't really working with her, that there was someone behind the scenes who was actually making the decisions. Because oftentimes she took a long time to give me an answer to questions that I had. And I didn't realize that. So finding out early on who you're really dealing with, if somebody has got a partner, whether it's a life partner or a business partner, you've got to understand who is really making the decisions and make sure that you understand their situation and what's involved in them deciding to do something or not to do something. That's a great example of one of those where there was a business situation that I should have been more aware of. And had I known that, in advance, I wouldn't have done that deal. Now, on the flip side, there's the business stuff. I mean, if you see somebody who you get the feeling like they're trying to hide something from you in terms of the numbers, they aren't wanting to be transparent and fully open about the numbers and dollars that they're making currently, then I would definitely avoid that, because that's something that's a huge red flag that can truly screw you up going forward. Okay, so here are some things that I always hear from people that are their concerns when they're considering doing a deal like this. So I want to address them individually. One of them could be, what if the client tries to manipulate the numbers? Well, make sure that you're set up in a situation, whether it's in Go High Level or something else, where all of those numbers are transparent to you and to them, so that you know exactly what the numbers are coming in, what the expenses are, so you can tell without a doubt what is going on numerically. In my case, I have a tendency to want to let someone else handle the financial elements of a deal, and that's because in doing so, I can never be accused of any financial improprieties. Now, for some people, they don't mind doing the accounting, they don't mind running the numbers, they don't mind paying the expenses. I would rather just not worry about that side of the business and just split the money at the end of every month. I get from my clients, I usually get, or my partners, I call them my partners, I usually then get a piece. My piece is given to me monthly, and I don't have to worry about doing the accounting. Now, you might like doing the accounting, in which case that might be one of the items that you write down in terms of your agreement that you will be doing. Whereas in my case, I'm never doing that. One of the questions people always ask me is, how long will it be before I start seeing some real money coming in? Now, if you're currently doing hourly or monthly rates, it's almost like you're on a salary from a certain number of clients. And that's, for many people, very safe, very comfortable, and it is, frankly. But I'm not telling you, let's say you had a total of 10 clients. What I would suggest is, don't try and wholesale switch to doing equity deals, because that would be a really bad idea. You want to take and do this slowly. Start with one person, your best potential client that you're going to turn into a partner, and start to work with them to try and do an equity deal like this, because it'll take a little while, depending on how you structure the agreement, for you to start getting paid. In most of the cases that I've done that have started, from ground zero, from scratch, it's taken a while to recoup some of the investments that were necessary in the beginning to get any money at all coming in. And I was able to do that because I had existing, standard retainer clients who were paying me, as you should as well. So don't jump into this unless you have some stable hourly or monthly retainer clients. So the next question, of course, is, how does one avoid becoming dependent on just one client, one partner, one source of income? And in my case, this hits home really strongly, because my biggest equity deal that I had was, in a way, it was cut. It wasn't cut short, but it had to be dramatically changed, because the person I was working with decided that he no longer wanted to be involved in the business. So we had to find someone else to replace him, who was also a well known entity in that field. In this case, it was the voiceover business. And this particular individual that I started working with many years ago, Bill DeWeese, great guy, but he decided he wanted to spend more time with his grandkids. And so we had to figure out how to find someone to replace someone. So it's important that you understand that long term, you should always be thinking about what ifs. And one of the what ifs here is, what if the person who you're working with decides they don't want to do this anymore? Or what if the person you're wanting to, continue to work with, gets hit by a bus? I mean, what are you going to do then? So all of those elements should be included in the agreement that you put together to cover yourself properly. And similar to a marriage, sometimes you'll have partnerships that have, struggles and concerns and problems that can't be fixed. So you want to make sure that your agreement clearly details what will happen if something goes wrong, because you want to foresee, and it's almost like a prenuptial. You want to make sure that you have all of the bases covered in the event that your partner doesn't work out. And that could be doesn't work out due to finances, doesn't work out due to personality, doesn't work out due to health issues. All of these things have got to be addressed in the equity agreement that you put together. That, again, I can give you a copy of if you just put the word equity below or in the comments. I'll make sure and get that to you. Okay, so if you want to make the transition from what you're doing now, which was probably an hourly or a monthly retainer-based situation, or even a revenue share deal, and you want to transition into equity deals, I suggest that you do this, very slowly and very carefully, because in doing so, you're not going to take a dip in income for any length of time. Next steps for you, if you want to get this going, is number one, take a look at your client list right now and all the people that you have, and identify one or two people that you think would be good partners. Now, this would be both, they have great potential in terms of revenue, but they're also really a good personality match. You get along with them well. You've been working with them long enough to know sort of who they truly are, not just who they represent to the outside world. So take those people and approach them with this deal. And what you want to stress to them is, rather than you being a fixed cost, which you currently are for them now, if you're doing an hourly or monthly retainer deal, instead of being a fixed cost, you now become a variable cost, which is good for them, because the revenue that you generate, your fees are going to be totally dependent on the amount of money you generate. And so any business person will understand that having someone involved on a percentage basis will, number one, make it so that they have a vested interest in both of your success, but also a fee that is based on percentages is a lot easier to compute. And it's very important to have it set up this way, because you'll find that those deals that you do in this manner will work out better because you have a vested interest in the success of both of you, rather than you just working for a flat fee, which is what most people do all day long. Okay, so if you're interested in kind of getting my help on how to do this, what I do is I work with people in my what I call my 90-day equity accelerator, which is I come in and we work together to help you find, locate, and land your first equity deal in 90 days. And I literally will, one of my strong points is I'm really good at closing and selling these deals over the phone. So part of what I offer to people who I work with is the ability to get on sales calls with them and be represented as a partner, whatever you want to call me, or an advisor, and I'll help you close the deal. But my goal is to help you land one of these within 90 days. And if we don't land one within 90 days, I'll work with you for up to a year to make sure it happens. And that's something that, I mean, I'll guarantee it, because if I can't help you find a deal within 90 days, but at longest a full year, I don't deserve what you gave me. So that's how, my situation, my structure is for my 90-day accelerator program. Okay, so please, if you have any questions, if you're a consultant, a coach, an agency owner, whatever it is, in the comments below, just ask the questions and I'll make sure to answer them for you. And I will watch and listen for any and all questions and make sure I answer them in there. Also, you'll notice there's a number below. That's my real number. It's not a setter. It's not some outside entity that's taking these calls. You will be getting in contact with me directly. So if you want to contact me, my number is right there. Please feel free to do so. I don't know if we're a great match, but I'd like to see. If you're interested in seeing if this kind of a deal will work for you, I'd be happy to talk. And I'm also open to potential equity deals with people like you. So it's possible that after we talk about things, the 90-day accelerator won't be the program for you. Instead, we might want to partner together to do something. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I hope it's been helpful and allowed you to look at things through a different lens, understanding that the real money, whether I mean that's why Shark Tank exists. I mean the real money exists with equity deals, not with flat fees or even revenue sharing.